Africa Games, man, that are going to be taking place in Accra, Ghana. They're actually started already, but what makes this important is that this year they are bringing rugby for the first time. And as a result, my personal interest went up when I found out that the Nigerian women's rugby team will be making their debut at the African Games this year. And, you know, when you have all that and you got the interest, the expertise, but you don't have all the knowledge that goes along with it, you bring somebody else in, and we got a chance to talk to the legend, former New York Rugby GM, man, is coach of coaches, coach from Jamaica to Brazil to Nigeria and more. This man has been doing it forever. We got Steve Lewis, who's going to be explaining and breaking down what's been going on with the rugby championship. So with the Africa Games, and what is going on with Nigeria Rugby as he takes them into what can be potentially a gold medaling situation for this debut team. So I hope you guys take it in. Let me introduce to you Steve Lewis. Man, you know I'm always here about Nigeria, and I've talked about this multiple times, and so we're here obviously with the man, the myth, the legend. All right, look, recognize him for Nigeria Rugby, but also has his company Elevate Rugby. It's about to change the coaching world for universities here in the U.S., for coaching in general in the U.S., but also, man, this is a guy that's been into depth. I remember the first time that we met, the man made fun of me. He said, "Oh, your video, you were looking ugly in your video."
I've actually got some good photographic evidence of you in Little Rock, Arkansas. So we can talk about that if you want.
Yo, I love it. Yo, Steve Lewis, man. Steve, thanks so much for coming through.
Sure. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be in the presence of greatness, you know?
I am feeling the honor. I'm feeling the honor of the greatness of being around you. So, and obviously, look, a lot of people don't know. I add this little tidbit before we get started. Steve's mom is a direct reason that my wife is my wife now. If it was not for her, we would not have gone through the program, au pair program, that would have led her to Baton Rouge, where I would have met her, and all of a sudden now in Brazil and married with twins on the way. So thank your mom.
We're family. We're family, you and I.
Through and through. I love it, man. Steve, man.
She's a big fan of yours, so she watches the rugby odds with she likes you, she likes JBL, not so McCarthy, not so much.
I mean, look, we struggle to try and love Matt. We try and struggle, but he wants to make it difficult for no reason.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So obviously, the big thing that we wanted to talk about coming up next week is Africa Games, which I don't feel like a lot of people know, and I only was recently getting to know more about it. But with the Africa Games, we finally have rugby being a major participant in rugby sevens. And this year, Nigeria, since they finally have their accreditation or whatever back and allowed to put together a team, were finally able to send a team. Fortunately, they were able to send a women's team. Unfortunately, not able to send the men's team. Yo, Steve, look, what do we have going on with this, man? Because every time I get like a little bit of a high, like something bureaucratic just takes it away from me a little bit with Nigeria's side. So as the head coach for the seventh side and what you guys did with the Olympic side, with the Olympic qualifiers, what's going on with Nigeria and Nigerian men for the Africa Games?
Okay, so the Africa Games is every 4 years. It's like the Pan Am Games, right? So it's the Olympic, essentially rules and Olympic committees run it. And each sort of continent has a similar type of thing. So this is the first time that rugby has been accepted as a sport in the Africa Games. So that's why it's kind of unique. It's not Olympic qualification because that's kind of already done for Paris. Right. So we are essentially an exhibition sport. And the games have already started and they're in Accra, Ghana this year. So we have rugby in it, which is fantastic. As you alluded to, initially we had 2 teams, men and women going. But in a classic example of Nigerian, shall we say, bureaucratic incidents, they asked us to pull a team. They said, we don't have enough money. You need to pull one of the teams. Well, we had some success last year. Nigeria's just come back from a World Rugby ban, right? And so last year the men did very well. Qualified Mauritius, went to the Africa qualifier, played the Blitzbokke, played Kenya, had a great time. So the women haven't played, and we felt, the board and myself felt, that we should allow the women the opportunity to get on the field. So this will be the first time Nigeria women have ever played as Nigeria women. So it's historic. It's been a challenge. I could give you multiple stories on the Africa wins again varying, but the key thing is most of the girls are there in Accra. I get there on Friday, and we start playing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. So it's beyond exciting, and it's beyond historic for Nigerian women to get out on the field and play rugby.
Man, and I think this is one of those, like you said, this is a historic moment, and I add, especially considering that this is an area that has one of the youngest populations on the continent in terms of total general under 30, highest populations under 30. It's an area that obviously is very cultural significant to Western Africa and the rest of the continent. So the ability to be able to develop rugby from both the women's and the men's side is very, very high ceiling, in my opinion. Would you agree? Disagree?
So for a lot of people don't understand, Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa and the biggest population. So I think 1 in 6 Africans are Nigerian.
Recognize us.
In addition to that, the athletic DNA and the potential is there. Physically, they're one of the bigger nations, and so I always thought an interesting statistic was at the last Olympics, 57 Nigerians were in the Olympics representing other countries.
Yeah.
So what that's showing you is there's plenty of talent, and the talent is not actually being nurtured domestically in Nigeria. So with the rugby is interesting because, and we can get to this further, the team is composed of both domestic girls and girls from the diaspora, Canada, US, UK. And as with the men, you have that balance. Two things are important. It's important to be successful on the field representing Nigeria, but it's also important that the game domestically in the country actually blossoms. And it's not a bunch of expats running around playing in tournaments, or it shouldn't be. We need to perform creditably, but we also need to have that aspirational piece whereby the game can actually grow.
Right. I know particularly whenever you guys were returning, when we were returning back with the Olympic team this year, and a lot of players, and I know I have a lot of people who contact me from Nigeria, as well as some of the groups who always ask, all right, how many of the domestic players are able to play this time? How are we getting more domestic players in? And again, for the sake of context, a lot of people don't know there is a legitimate league that goes. A lot of it spread around Lagos, for the most part, going up to northern Nigeria, Abuja, Kabata area, and then a little bit of central southeast Nigeria. Though I know my Port Harcourt area doesn't get as much.
Want me to test you on your Nigerian geography?
Oh, Lord.
Your point is well made. So most of the rugby in Nigeria, for obvious reasons, population is Lagos.
Right.
There is a stronghold in Kano.
That was the other one. Yes.
Yeah, so Martin Crawford up there, he took 2,000 kids playing rugby every weekend.
Really?
So Lagos and Kano are the two strongholds of rugby within Nigeria. There's some in Abuja as well. Interestingly, the girls, it's Edo State, which is down towards Port Market. But so I think 7 of the girls are from Edo. And interestingly, so with the women, it's more domestic and less expat or diaspora. Yeah. With the men at the moment, it's more diaspora and less domestic. You don't want to get into quotas or anything like that, but you want to pick the best 12 players. But you have to be conscious of the two things: performance and growing the game.
I do want to ask, before we go into a little bit more detail on the women's side and what we ended up finding from the final squad, was in the determination, and you just spoke on it, on finding the best 12 players. Was there any pushback or any kind of conflict when it came to location. Obviously, like with presidential election, we have our regional setups on everything where it's like president needs to come from this part, and if they're not from here, then you yada yada yada. Everybody gets into a little bit of a halu, bahooey and whatnot.
Wahala.
Wahala.
Plenty wahala in selection, let me tell you.
So what did you guys find that did you guys have that same issue, or because of the fact that the sport, especially with the women's side, is so niched, you were able to really just particularly take the best available players, plus the few that have been playing over in the UK and Canada for sevens tournaments like Las Vegas or LA sevens and whatnot?
Yeah, so you're right. With the women, Edo State in particular has put a lot of money into sport. And for whatever reason, they put a lot of money into women's rugby, and those girls played rugby league for Nigeria about 2 months ago. So, that's why there's a preponderance of Edo State girls in this. Now, with the men, it's Barewa, which is a Kano club. They're probably the best, and then there's Kauri and Lagos. There's good players in both centers, and there's definitely some politics. You will know, but perhaps viewers might not. Yeah, Nigeria is a massive country, multiple tribes. Yep. So, for instance, when you're putting a team together, you potentially have Yoruba or Igbo, English-speaking Christian guys. Mm-hmm. You have Arabic-speaking Muslim Fulanis and Hausa in the north. Mm-hmm. And then you have, there's no other way to say it, posh boys from the UK. So you're trying to marry all these three types of people who don't necessarily like each other off the bat. Right. And you've got to try and convince them that, here it is here. This is what they're all playing for, right? Nigeria. Right. With the women, I don't anticipate it being women in that regard are much easier to deal with. So when I get there on Friday, we've got 9 domestic and 6 diaspora, but the majority of the domestic, I think 7 are from Edo. So I anticipate it being a little easier getting the cohesion. And this, I'm talking more off the pitch as well, right? They've got to trust each other, like each other,
right?
Go to battle with each other. Yeah.
No, and that one I think becomes which is what will be very, very interesting to make do, because again, for the sake of the viewers, we all have it. When we're talking about multiple cultures, we're talking about 500 different language groups that just exist in Nigeria alone, let alone the major ones. So for me, I'm McMay, very small group that's inside southeast Nigeria. I'm closer to Igbo, but not Igbo because we're not Igbo, but closer to that in that regard. But those past elements and that conversion of people in one area does create its own cultural conflicts in some way, shape, or form. So,
and then they're coached by the biggest minority, right? Scottish Nigerians. Scottish Nigerians. There's only about 3 of us.
Between your Jamaican, your undisputed Jamaican citizenship, now the Nigerian one, man, you're reversing it. What we do, all right? The Nigerians and Jamaicans go everywhere. Not the Scottish going over there.
Hey, I've got the DNA test. 3% West African.
Let's go. Let's go. I love it. I love it. So, okay, so let's get moving. Let's forward in on the women, the Nigerian Rugby Women's team. Yep. And the article had based that you guys had finalized the list of players. I'm going to list them off here, and then let's talk about who can watch and what your opinions to do. We have from the foreign players list, we have Fidelia Omagan, Gloria Azudua, Ada Okonkwo, that's from Canada. Ashelia Gada from the UK. Rosalind Okbara is from the US. And then the home base ones are Iora Success, Becky Okichipi. Let me know if I'm getting these. Correct me whenever you do it. Perpetua Manma and Blessing Umuji. For these teams coming out of Delta, Edo, and then Delta and Edo State RFCs. When you guys were selecting these teams, what was the parameters that you guys utilized to be able to determine the best girls, and how many did you guys have to select from?
Yeah, so on the domestic side, that's really been run by Martin Crawford and by Aziz Ladipo, who is the secretary, or essentially the manager of Nigerian Rugby. So they had a camp in Abuja. They did all the things you would normally do, bronco tests, and that group was reduced from an extended squad down to about 15. And we ended up with 9 of them. I think you missed one, Precious Felix, South Africa-based girl.
Yeah.
So she's there. And then essentially on the diaspora side, Fidelia Omegon is the godmother is not necessarily the way to put it, but she's going to be co-captain. So I've relied heavily on her. I've watched a fair bit of film. You know, a couple of the girls played PR7s. So there's enough film on them. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, this is a bit of a challenge from a coaching perspective because I've never coached any of the 15. So I get there and we got 3 days. I mean, obviously I've given them the material. Right. They've been working in camp, but I have not seen them.
Right.
So my work's going to be, I've got my work cut out for me to understand who's who and what our best combinations are. But the process, I mean, that's the nature of the process when you're dealing with players from multiple locations.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's always going to end up being some level of a trust test. And I feel like at least within the culture of rugby, at least we know, even if it's not the most efficient way, at least there is a normality to, in a very short period of time, mesh everybody together to be able to play the best version of a high-level game. Obviously, you know, it's going to be a little bit more bared down. I doubt you'll use as much of a complex passing system, but obviously one that's enough to be able to utilize the skills off of a day or two of practice training, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a professional environment and like, you know, some of the top tier 1 sevens teams, right? Most people, you're coming together and you get a week beforehand, right? Even in the Challenger Series and invitational sides. So the skill, the clever piece is, as you say, not dumbing it down, but stripping it back and making it a relatively minimalist game plan, right? Right. You concentrate on some basic things. And then as you spend more time together, you can add things in and layer things in. But you're absolutely right. It's about simplifying it, getting everyone on the same page, everyone using the same language, everyone trusting each other, and then give it a go.
Man, I love that. I love that. All right. So I want to go into the competition because this is the part that really has me the most interested. I've talked a lot about how people need to keep watching, especially when it came to the Gold Cup, watching the countries that seem like you have not, that are underestimated the most. Uganda being my personal dark horse in a lot of competitions. They have, I don't know where they came from, but the level of play that they've been able to do within the Africa Cup, even a little bit in the Challengers Cup, has been tremendous for a country that, one, is not thought of to be a rugby country. Number two, obviously is very economically stripped compared to maybe Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, even Ghana, but yet seems to have a very powerful base. You have a lot of you experience them with the men's side in the Olympics with the Olympic qualifiers. And then obviously with the women, can you kind of give me a rundown of what people can expect, or maybe give me some confirmation or disconfirmation on what to expect from that Uganda side?
Yeah, I would have them. You know, South Africa is the most organized rugby country in the continent, but then right behind it you've got Kenya, and as you say, you've had Uganda moving up fast. They've actually overtaken Zimbabwe and Namibia, which were both traditional sort of powerhouses. Yeah. The reason for the success is Uganda, it's all about having a robust domestic league, right? So they're organized, and their women and their men are playing sevens regularly at home. And so when they then get the opportunity, as both Uganda and Kenya, men and women, have both been in the Challenger Series, so they're going to come in hot because they're organized, they've been playing together, that they are button down gold and silver, right? South Africa, to my understanding, are not coming. Right. So those two are your favorites. Underneath that, it is a crapshoot. We are playing. I have my fingers in most places. I have intelligence and data coming in. I don't know what's going on in Burundi or the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? Madagascar, I got some contacts, and they play a lot of rugby. But Burkina Faso,
nothing.
So It's really going to be very interesting. So you get out there, you kind of try and watch them at practice, you try and watch every game,
right,
and get a sense. But it really is, with the exception of Kenya and Uganda, where there is plenty of film. Yeah, as a coach, I'm sort of going in blind.
right. You know, as someone who has been, like you just said, has your hands in a lot of rugby, especially coming out of the tier 2 and developing that up, which I think is probably one of the most commendable things that you do, to be able to provide that high level for areas that are not particularly rugby heavy, but have potential high levels of potential rugby talent.
Yep.
You know, when you look at a competition like this one for the first time being in the African Games, how much do you think that actually plays into the development of not just rugby in Africa itself, but how it plays into the world scale of it, whether it's the Caribbean or whether it's Asia, South America, these areas that have the highest population but get the least amount of attention? How significant is something like this for that growth?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's another tournament, and remember, this one isn't organized by World Rugby. This is
right.
Olympic committees. Now, I personally believe World Rugby just pays lip service to growing the game, right? In terms of, I mean, the Six Nations run it, the Super Rugby countries, those countries run it. You look at the World Rugby Council. So while they talk a big game, oh, we're growing the game, we want to do this, we want to do that. This is the first year with an expanded Challenger Series, like 12 teams, second tier, 3 tournaments, that they've actually put their money where their mouth is. But let's be realistic. They don't really fund Rugby Africa. You know, they're not giving, you know, Herbert Mensah, who's the Ghanaian president of Rugby Africa, is pretty much there with his begging bowl at every World Rugby meeting. So this sporting colonialism, don't get me going on politics here.
Let's go.
But sporting colonialism is alive and well, right?
Right.
And so they talk about the Caribbean. You look at the athletes, talk about Africa, the athletes. All right, let's put some money into it. Let's see these athletes get the opportunity, and then you'll see results. You see just shoots of growth. Uganda, Kenya, South Africa's different, right?
Right.
But there's so much untapped athletic potential. And I don't feel it's well enough resourced by World Rugby.
You know, I know particularly whenever we talk about something like Augustin Pichot spoke really heavily about, you know, why is there not more investment in places like Brazil, in places like the Caribbean, in places like Nigeria, where, once again, as you spoke of, a heavy amount of athletic talent. But again, you also get to see, I loved what you did with Jamaica over the last couple of years, where they started finding themselves in Hong Kong series more and more, and being a consistent, at least a competition, and maybe not contender for a medal, but they were in, people had to pay attention to what they were doing. I remember a game against Germany, strong finish by Jamaica on that one. I think it was a loss, but you start to see the push there. From what you see with, like, in what you'll obviously experience, but what you see with the teams in Africa now, do you see that maybe even the home bases themselves are starting to put more investment into rugby because there's a potential there, or is it still very skeleton, and, you know, we're really still pooling for any kind of recognition to be able to elevate?
Yeah, I mean, I think with regard to Nigeria, you know, the total amount of budgeted money does not go to the sport, right? And it does not go to the athlete. It doesn't go to the competition, which is a shame.
Right.
And I think those countries that are, you know, you see Uganda and Kenya going well, they still have issues. I'm talking sort of financial, you know, governance, shall we say. Right. So that's the frustration, because the athletes are there. You need, it's the chicken and the egg, right? So you need success on the field to excite the press or excite sponsors, right? So if you get a winning team, they have a couple of good tournaments, it's easy to get sponsors, and then you get more money, and it's easy to keep going. But it's hard to have that initial success. You kind of have to have this fantastic tournament out of the blue and get real, like hopefully with Nigeria women. If we get a bronze medal, boom, we're alive and well and going. Right. So chicken and egg. You need the support, financial support, sponsorship, funding, and resources and facilities to get the results. But sometimes you can't get that until you get a couple of freak results, you know.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. And again, it's a common problem that we see from a global rugby standpoint. But again, the uniqueness of this sport in terms of the perception in these areas obviously adds another level of pressure that goes along with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to finish that point. So, for instance, last year, Nigerian men out of rugby 3 years, haven't played a game. So we go to Mauritius, which was the pre-Olympic qualifier, right? And the top 3 went up. So we finished second, lost the final to Algeria. So we go up to Zimbabwe, we play with the big boys. So, and we lost to the Blitzbok at 29 zip. Right. We lost to Kenya 32-10. Right. That's pretty damn good.
Right. Those being the top 2 in the end, the finalists.
Yeah. So we went from 34th to 8th last year. Man. So if Nigerian men's rugby is at all funded and gets 4 competitions, hopefully 5 or 6, they're not going to be 1 or 2, but we could get to 4 or 5 pretty quickly in a year, 2 years. With the women, I feel the opportunity is even bigger because South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and then what is there? We can go far fast. And that's the exciting thing about African women's rugby. The opportunity is there.
I love it. I love it. I got one more question for you before I let you go. Look, I need to ask this because what happened with the Morocco game? What is in Morocco? Because that is not a team that I expected whenever in Mauritius. Was it Mauritius or was it a qualifier right before? You guys were it was such a tough game. Obviously, Morocco ended up winning that tournament. But I wanted to know, what I didn't expect Morocco to be in it. It's not a country that I expected to have a powerful rugby team. And once again, Kenya, South Africa for sure, Namibia, Zimbabwe for sure. What was it that you see with Morocco, or that with Morocco, that allowed them to have all of a sudden this super team? And then I just haven't heard nothing from them since then.
Okay, so it was Algeria.
I'm sorry, that's it. Northern Africa is where I had in my mind.
Right next to it. Yeah, but I'll tell you why. 5 French second division players. So think about that. Think about while Nigeria has, say, UK and US diaspora, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, being former French colonies, have a lot of French connections. So all their good players go over there. They're not playing top league in France, but they're playing Pro de Deux, they're playing Federal 3. So they had 5 guys who were semi-pro players. So it wasn't, 12 Algerians. Right. It was, and Nigeria was, 5 UK guys, same thing. So that's why they were strong, because they had legitimate players.
I see. Yeah. I see. Okay. It was just something that I was wondering, because again, every time there's always seems to be a surprise of who ends up being top level. And I'm like, where did you come from? Why have I not seen you on any of the other competitions since or on the map?
But this is the beauty of sevens, right? So in 15s, the best team wins 80 to 90% of the time. Right. In sevens, that percentage drops. You've got the chance for an upset. One mistake, missed tackle or a yellow card or a referee decision, and a game can swing in sevens. You get more upsets. That's why it's more exciting. And you get more underdogs coming through, which is why it's more exciting.
Man, I love it. Yep. Steve, man, I truly appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. Like I said, I always tell people, I want to be able to bring more of these competitions up to the front, especially when it comes to the continent and especially when it comes to Nigeria. The more that I can be able to push them up, personally, there's always going to be that end. Before we go, I just want to see if you could talk a little bit about Elevate Rugby. And what it is that you are fully doing. I obviously briefed it a little bit, but why take it from the third party when we go direct?
Exactly. So Elevate Rugby, right? It's my new venture. It's essentially coaching consultancy. So I believe that particularly with regard to coaching sevens and also with regard to coach education, coach mentoring, there isn't a lot of coach education in the US. USA Rugby does a piss poor job of it. So there's a gap there, and perhaps I can fill it. With the sevens, I've got a reasonable record, and there's a lot of demand to come in and do 2-3 day camps. And, I'm a gun for hire, so hire me.
How can people get in contact with you?
Yep, www.elevate-rugby.com.
Elevate
your coaching, elevate your sevens, elevate your rugby.
Let's go. Let's go. I love the tagline. Guys, check it out. www.elevate-rugby.com. Steve, thank you so much. Yo, good luck out in Puerto Rico with Babson. I hope you guys absolutely smash this weekend. And obviously, just safe trips overall.
Great. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you again.
Before I let you guys get back to it, I want you guys to go check out rugbyoutletmall.com. Yo, this is the place where we are bringing in casual rugby wear. We're trying to set up the designs. I'm going to let you get back to the show. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. But in 2024, it is necessary that you have your own website. Don't let anybody tell you social media is the only place that you can be able to advertise. You need your own home. And the best home to be able to purchase online is through Green Geeks. This is the web host platform that gives you the most for the cheapest price, y'all. I've been using Green Geeks for almost 10 years now, and off the WordPress platform, I've been able to customize and create websites to my desire and to the liking that I need. Included with it, they give you some of the best customer service in the business, and I cannot say enough about them. They have been able to be a great assistance to everything I do. And if you guys want to be able to start today at $4.95 per month, go to the link in the bio or the link in the caption, depending on where you're at, and go use it to help the show and get your site up right away. There's no reason that you need to be having complications, that you need to be paying thousands of dollars to be able to do it, or even thousands of dollars per month to be able to get your website up. Go to Green Geeks, check it out, support the show. All right, let's get you back.